let's celebrate the fact we are not getting another mirror matchup. Things are changing. We hop into map number 4. LucifroN, with the opportunity to make it a clean sweep, will be whipping out the Ottomans. But VortiX, last stand here with the Delhi.
Indeed, it is the last stand here in the first round of Golden League. LucifroN at match point in the finals of the first stage. Don't forget, folks, this is only one of the first 3 stages of the Golden League before the playoffs. We're going to have completely different settings being played starting round 2 the next weekend. But for the time being, whoever wins over here is going to secure a lot of points, which will propel them possibly to a spot in the playoffs, as well as $1,000 extra on top of the total prize pool that they will get at the end of the tournament.
LucifroN right now is just making it look all too simple. You know, it's got to be said, game 1 looked dominant. Game 3 looked dominant the way he dismounted. And even game 2, you know, it took a while to reveal itself, but Lucy, for most of it, looked ahead. So you have to wonder, you know, we get 5-10 minutes in this. If VortiX looks behind, is there any hope? Or is Delhi really kind of, especially in this round where you can't build keeps, in a position where if they don't dominate feudal, they can't dominate the game?
Military school opening coming up here for LucifroN. He's going to try to throw off that Delhi play, hit that gold mine. Now, that's going to be a little challenging to do because if you take a look at the base layout of VortiX, he's got the gold mine all the way at the back. Berries could be threatened a little bit, but they're close to the TC, so that Spearman, I don't think it will accomplish much over here.
No, it's like, it's always one of the kind of gambles when you go for the early spears, but like, it's not going to hurt him too much. He'll eventually just convert them to produce something else once he reaches feudal. It does have that impact of delaying research times, right? Like if that scholar has to come out and heal damage done, which you can kind of reach the berries, you can reach the gold in the back, then that's going to slightly delay timings on things like Sanctity. So it's still not that bad of a thing for LucifroN to do, essentially for free from something he'd want later anyway.
Yeah, like, I think one of the critical details over here will be scouting. That applies to both sides, especially because we have seen some greedy approaches on this map, especially if you go back to the previous set between VortiX and Beastie in the lower bracket finals. And if you remember that set, VortiX, part of the reason why he could build an advantage over Beastie was how good his scouting was and how well he could diagnose what Beastie was doing here. So I think that's going to be a key factor here on both sides, actually, having that constant scouting out there and making sure that your opponent cannot get away with a greedy play should they decide to go for one.
Oh, you go for greedy things you can do here, like just kind of looking at the lay of the lands. I don't know how I feel actually about the generation of VortiX. Like the deer spawns are just forward of wood lines on the right side. Sometimes you just want one each side, so you have options. Like you have got the berries, but they're such open areas. And considering Lucy is going with the twin minaret Madrasa, I'm expecting that double stables, double archer range build, which will allow him to kind of flood Sipahi onto those flanks and block your additional food sources.
Yeah, that's a good point. He's going to spot the Tower of Victory, so he knows exactly what's up. And there is going to be obviously a proper reaction to that. Expect, as you said, cavalry play right from the get-go. Whereas on the other side, VortiX's scout is stationed all the way back home. So for the time being, he doesn't have information. But if I'm not mistaken, he's going to move up just now. And by the time LucifroN gets to Feudal Age, VortiX is going to be there to see the exact production buildings that the yellow player is coming up with.
I'm wondering, like, if there's a world in which Lucy just tries to be a bit more greedy in his approach here. I'm not expecting it, because I think we've seen a lot of data, and, you know, Ottomans kind of have this best shot against the Delhi on a kind of all-in timing. Especially when you're in a position where by going greedy, you'd forfeit all the sacred sites, right? Like we talked about on between Beastie and VortiX on Basin, this idea that in theory you could be a bit more greedy with the Ottomans because one of the sacred sites shouldn't be captured. But even in that situation, VortiX in that game was able to get all 3 sacred sites captured.
Yeah, that's a big thing. And don't forget that VortiX has played that set against Beastie today, and LucifroN was likely watching. So one of the things that LucifroN could take away from that set is how good VortiX was at exploiting map control. Not just the sacred sites, but after that the relics as well. So you forfeit map control to VortiX, he's going to punish you for that. Like, you have no map control, expect VortiX to send out 3 scholars to go for all 3 sacred sites. Even if he can't keep them all alive at the same time, he's gonna try that because he wants to get the maximum value out of that map control.
Lucy, now that we have just got a few spears in the field, it kind of creates a situation where VortiX might want to build in the archers, and that means that Lucy can be a step ahead now going into the Sipahi. I am expecting Blacksmith and then stable drop by probably like 6.5 minutes. But interesting enough, like, you know, the Blacksmiths, the other annoying thing that puts you in this situation, like the cool thing about Ottomans versus Delhi is Delhi sometimes get an edge via the passive research into Blacksmith upgrades. The problem is by going up against the Ottomans, they're going to always have a Blacksmith, so they might just mirror the timings, although they'll pay for it. But where the big difference comes in is because you're forced to go for TOV, your passive unlocks tend to be lagging behind an Ottoman player in most matchups.
Indeed, that's a big factor. That's a huge factor, especially because we're seeing Tower victories. So one of the things that won't be there for Delhi is a quick power spike upon age up. Those upgrades will take a lot more time to come in, and that's a window for the Ottomans to use.
Let's see if he's able to utilize it. So double military school is going to be the archery range. So sometimes you'll see 2 archery ranges first into 2 stables. Sometimes you'll see archery range, 2 stables, archery range. I think because of the comp that VortiX is running, you naturally want to go into additional stables faster, right? So you build just enough archers to kind of like be annoying and make sure that Delhi can't commit scholars to fights if they were thinking about it. But then you just come over the top with this unassailable tide of Sipahi riders.
Yeah, indeed, and it's gonna be Sipahi for the time being for LucifroN. Not a single archer mixed in just yet for him. Instead, he goes for the Matter. Archer range just now being finished, but it looks like we're going to have a much more defensive approach here for LucifroN. For the time being, he's going to forfeit the Sacred Sites. And, well, it looks like VortiX is already moving out for those. He's only going to have 2 scholars on the field, so it's going to take some time until he caps all 3 of those Sacred Sites.
Yeah, so LucifroN knows he has to come out on a delay because his opponent would have went Archer straight away. But he'll be able to get on the field in time to contest the 2nd Sacred Site, maybe even the 1st. Like, if you're willing to just throw away the spears, and you feel like the Archers initially with the attack speed can win the rest, like, you might just all in on it. But it's the Horseman threat, right? Like, if you don't have 10 plus archers, 2 horsemen will tear you a new one.
Yeah, and it looks like for the time being, LucifroN will hide his forces in the Stealth Forest. He's going to wait for that. And look at that, he's also going to dance around just delaying that Sacred Site. And, oh, VortiX is actually a little slow reacting to this one. That's actually precious seconds lost on that Sacred Site. Hello, mister?
All right,
there we go.
The dude, look at the instant reaction from LucifroN in comparison, though. Like, he just knew. He's perfectly waiting for it. So that delay is really important because it's going to stop the extra injection of gold that VortiX needs to pump up his scholars. Like, you can see he's got nobody on gold whatsoever. This is very painful for those tech timers we talked about. He's only now getting his first blacksmith upgrade in the next 20 seconds.
Exactly, that's a big thing. And it also helps LucifroN rally some more forces to the middle and be ready for the opponent as he moves to the 2nd Sacred Site.
Oh, no.
Now the scout gets picked off, and that's big. It's very big, depriving VortiX from all information. And LucifroN has been using that Stealth Forest for a while, so with no vision available for VortiX, he could easily be surprised here.
I think VortiX has to play 1 Sacred Site now. Like, he doesn't have the info to go for more. He doesn't know exactly what LucifroN's building. He sees initial archers, but he doesn't know what the second wave is. Such a frustrating situation to be in. Like, these are 2 aggro civs. If you were up against a defensive civ, you can kind of shrug and be like, fine. But we know how these 2 civs function. Like, they are more or less neck and neck in the way that they can contest feudal. So just small details like a lack of vision can lead to an entire loss as we are entering the slow-mo phase of the game.
Yeah, but it looks like we have a bit of a slideshow coming up for us over here.
Wait, no.
Lidakor.
Sing it with me, the perfect song. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun. No, you know that one? Dun, 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 dun. Like, VortiX's hair just slowly flowing behind him.
Oh. Back on track,
like, we're time traveling now. VortiX, oh my god, he's playing Protoss. It's the teleportations. We're back in StarCraft. Flash comes in, Archers trying to trade out. Plenty of Spearmen in the mix of a VortiX, so he catches LucifroN a bit off guard, but the Sipahi are going to double commit in. The Meta just allows you to start a step back here. Needs to snipe out those Horsemen ASAP, trying to get rid of the Spears instead. VortiX out of front line to block against this, and the Archers are just going to commit to the trade. VortiX is going to lose everything here. He needs to get out.
Yeah, it's so problematic for VortiX right now that his Archer number isn't great. The Tower of Victory, that has a much less impact here than what the Matter has on the entire army of LucifroN. The 2nd Sacred Site will be denied. That's a big W here for LucifroN. Has a still formidable army, and don't forget, he's got the scout nearby to gauge and anticipate the exact size of the army coming from VortiX. On the other side, the scout was lost. VortiX is deprived of information. It's much harder for him to tell what the exact army of LucifroN is looking like.
And this is one of those things where the unique difference to the Ottomans compared to other civs is like that movement speed. It actually throws you off when you commit. VortiX probably felt like he had enough spears to leverage the start of the fight to then kind of poke at Lucy consistently and keep the lead. The problem is, because of that movement speed, you need maybe 4 or 5 additional spears at this point to gap close before it becomes a threat. LucifroN was just great with that small backup that disengaged entirely from the spears. And now he's just forced engagement after engagement. VortiX is going to double down. LucifroN maybe not showing enough respect here. Wasn't expecting this many horsemen to come through. Is trying to body block on the retreat. But he really needs some spears. The problem is LucifroN is now only starting to produce them. It's on a delay. However, with that Steeled Arrow upgrade, he has got enough archers to take out these horses one by one. And even if it costs you an archer in exchange, that is a 50% favorable exchange. Horsemen 120 resources, archers only 80.
Yeah, the blacksmith upgrades are not in just yet for VortiX, so right now it's even upgrades. Timing is perfect here for LucifroN. He's taking this just before the spike from those extra blacksmith upgrades would come in for VortiX. And once again, he takes a victory over here. In fact, one of the things I would love to see here from LucifroN is actually capitalizing on this, maybe with a forward tower. I feel like that would be such a good defensive position for him to hold here.
I'm a bit worried from VortiX at this point. Right, like, you know, there's an eco issue, which did he miss production? Oh, wow. He's 5 villages behind.
Ooh. It's actually interesting
None
because
have
he's got
died.
1,300 food income per minute, so it's actually somewhat surprising. Maybe he prioritized army production, seeing the numbers of the opponent, and forfeited villager production, but now that comes in as a very problematic factor, especially because once again in this fight, the archer mass looks a lot better for LucifroN. 34 archers against just 18, comparable amount of cavalry on the playing field.
LucifroN's just so on point with the way he's sacrificing archers here. He's always prioritizing Sipahi lives, because the Sipahis can win after the fact. Spearmen just once again traded out. Archers being thrown a little bit to the walls, but there's just enough of them to return fire. These horsemen are not really winning in these exchanges. Sipahi, I'm going to even up a little bit. Finally, he's able to come over the top, but after all is said and done, I mean, LucifroN can retreat away from this. He's still got plenty of archers waiting at home. And well, the horseman cost of VortiX, all I can see is more berry bushes being burned.
Exactly, like this is actually an interesting fight over here because it seems like it's a defeat for LucifroN, but in reality, pretty significant casualties on both sides. The matter is still kept alive. Archers regrouping. At the end of the day, you look at 32 to 22 army, but archer numbers very much comparable. Cavalry numbers also almost identical. And don't forget that we have a 6 villagers lead for LucifroN.
And he's baiting him in again. Like, this is the problem that I see. Is like VortiX, he takes a good initial exchange, but he feels the need to press the advantage, and it costs him dearly. It's the Sipahi after the fact. Like, a second layer comes in, and even if he kills these archers, he loses everything in return. Like, all I'm seeing is a situation in which you have finite food that you're burning through. The Madrissa is not finite. It's infinitesimal. And on top of that, because you're never raiding the flanks, LucifroN can also play pocket ecos to kind of mirror your economy.
Yeah, still though, these fights are actually starting to get worrisome for LucifroN. Numbers are being lost on both sides, but momentum seems to be slightly better now for VortiX. Still 29 army on the field as opposed to 16. LucifroN's gonna have to pull all the way back inside his base and have a bit of a regroup here. He's gonna have no trouble doing that though, so this is not a fight that VortiX can commit to in the long run.
I just keep looking at the Sipahi count. Like, as long as he has a few of them, they distract the archers long enough to reset. Like, that's what keeps happening. It's deceptive because this looks good, but now VortiX has to hold that sacred site. And the problem is, like, this passive production is going to escalate, right? These other elements of the Ottomans are going to escalate. Like, the longer feudal takes, the stronger they get. He's still got things like imams down the line, right? That passive healing can completely disarm VortiX in these fights.
Yeah, and as you said, pocket ecos are a factor, and the Delhi is slowly chewing down those berries. Both players are now expanding towards Hunt as well. And while the Sacred Site was captured for the time being by VortiX, it remains to be seen how long he can actually hold this one, because now LucifroN is back on track, and once again, he's up to 27 archers.
It's just so hard to sit on it. Like, this is the thing I just keep seeing. Like, VortiX is doing a great job of keeping the pressure the way it's happening. And finally, he gets it. The meta snipe is huge here. This is where he can chase on. He has the attack speed advantage, and LucifroN can't take these exchanges. Also, he hasn't prepped the meta to be pumped yet. So he needs to think about a full retreat. But the problem is, if you just run now, you're already in archer range. Your only choice is just to double down.
Exactly, numbers still looking pretty decent over here for LucifroN, and there's a new meta coming up here for Lucy. He needs to pull back for the time being, though, and this is probably the first time where we see a big advantage building up for VortiX on the battlefield. Also captures the third sacred site now, so puts the momentum even more on. Oh, this is looking grim for LucifroN, actually.
Yeah, it's turning around. Like, that meta snipe is everything. It means the world. So what's happening right now is LucifroN is just forfeiting Sapahi to get Archer Fire in his favor. But the best he can achieve is like a neutral. And that's bad because all three sacred sites are captured. It's not just the countdown, it's the amount of gold that VortiX now gets. If he was winning these engagements before he had that additional resources, his lead is going to surge.
Yeah, and I'm actually somewhat surprised that LucifroN is going for the meta being trained rather than just popping out the one from the Vizier points, because he's training a meta. You can see that on the top right. And it takes a lot of time for him to get those on the field, forfeiting very precious seconds. And now that VortiX sees that his opponent is retreating, he could start converting the resources that he's getting from those sacred sites into a possible Castle Age spike.
Yeah, and you know, some people argue, well, why didn't he just build a second meta? Come on, you gotta do it. A lot of Armament players will, but when you're pressured like this, when the exchanges are kind of even with a slight edge, as they were early on for Lucy, if you sacrifice Sapahi production to build a meta, you're not going to get these slight, even type exchanges. You're just going to get folded. It was an understandable read by Lucy, but VortiX, you know, once he reached that mass, we talked about it. Like, if you want to snipe the meta out, you need to have enough to catch your opponent off guard. Because if you get it to like a third of its HP bar, players tend to use them differently. They'll pull them further back. And although you can see that as an advantage and that movement speed will use less, it means the attack speed is always going to be unreachable for you.
Exactly. Now, there's a Stealth Forest out there hiding the forces of VortiX, and it looks like LucifroN wasn't able to gauge the exact number of those units. He's going to be forced to retreat over here. Not a lot of Sipahis on the field right now for him. Only 2 of them right now.
No, it's just mass archers now. And that's why VortiX is now doubling down on Horsemen, but he's trickling them in. Not the way you really want to be using them here. And LucifroN, he has the archer edge. And remember, he's slightly on defensive, so more of them sharpen the battle.
Yeah, that's not a good fight for VortiX by any means. It's Archer v Archer, Meta buff coming in clutch as well, and now he's gonna have to pull them back, but it's gonna be difficult with the Meta buff helping.
The cool thing is actually LucifroN, like, he's not overkilling units, but he's targeting more individual units than VortiX is. It isn't always working out here when the horsemen start to arrive, but now that he's delayed it long enough, you know, I'm just seeing a slight edge building. The Sapahi wave just distracts so long, and even when he snipes them, it's the edge the Archer mass now gets.
Yeah, and with the Meta movement buff, it's difficult for VortiX to pull back over here. He's actually pulling Scholars to heal.
Oh,
a risky endeavor, though.
No, but it's a smart play here. The Scholars are 130 health unit, right? And LucifroN's down to 20 archers. Even with the Steeled Arrow upgrade, that's just not enough damage to insta-snipe the Scholars. He doesn't want to waste time on it. So that gives a healthier reset in favor of VortiX. I think LucifroN might be at a phase where he has to consider the Imam point just to try and edge out this difference now. Otherwise, VortiX is going to play like your classic Delhi, where because they heal after each battle, they eventually take the lead. And, well, scrap that. LucifroN, I didn't check the bar for like 30 seconds, and all of a sudden,
that's what I was looking at for like a minute or so now. Like, part of the reason why he didn't overrun VortiX there is because he was banking up resources for Castle Age, and let's be honest, it's crazy. It just speaks of the power of the Ottomans that while both sides were pushing out units like crazy, and you were up against 3 sacred sites from the Delhi, you beat them to Castle Age by a mile, and the power spike will come in very fast. Even if VortiX now catches up in Castle Age timing, it's gonna take time until those upgrades come in, and this is the window that LucifroN is waiting for. He's unfazed by the fact that his opponent has 3 sacred sites, because he knows fully well that he's going to have a gigantic power spike coming up in the next 2 minutes.
And VortiX has multiple issues now. It's not just the fact he doesn't have what he needs for Castle Age, it's the fact that if he chooses to go for Castle Age, those techs don't immediately come out, right? You don't have to pay for them, they come out on a delay. LucifroN, on the other hand, can immediately upgrade these archers and make it so that you need 50 archers to beat his 35.
Yeah, timing could be perfect over here from VortiX, though. He sees the Castle Age, he's gonna move in, he needs to, and 50 seconds needs to be spent on that upgrade still for LucifroN. He's gonna try to delay this as much as possible, but even if VortiX commits, archer numbers are comparable, so best case scenario for VortiX is an even trade at best.
And that's not going to cut it. even with the 2 sacred sites trickling the gold, it is just put him so far behind. Remember, he's exhausting the berry patches, so food is about to start plummeting in terms of income. He's still 4 villages down. Diver's going to be committed in, though. Archer upgrade coming through in about 10 seconds. He needs to get damage done and get out, but the villagers are going to be sacrificed. LucifroN, with a great migration around the back of the formation, is going to lose a few, but he's not that far behind, not far enough behind. And if VortiX loses the entire army, and Lucy has, say, 30 units still, all of a sudden it could be his base being dove.
Exactly, and there's the Castle Age upgrade for those archers. Horsemen will now start melting, then the Matter is still alive. There's just no chance for VortiX to snipe it. Beautiful micro, beautiful unit control by LucifroN. VortiX has no other choice but to commit, but to what a whale. He's going to get a couple of villager picks for his efforts, but that's all that he can get.
Yeah, it's the best he can hope for. I love the fact he committed before the upgrade came out. He had no choice, but now you're so deep, you have to keep going. The second layer, though, Spearman and Horseman coming into idle the eco. LucifroN is not out of the woods yet, and going into Knights, pumping them out of these schools, now that you see Spears, could hurt him dearly.
Yeah, exactly. Men-at-Arms could actually be a little bit more useful over here, and there's a lot of idle eco for him. Finally, though, gets back on track with the economy. There's going to be Castle Age for VortiX, though, so his unit production will slow down for a brief moment as he spent his resources on Castle Age, and now this is a window for LucifroN to punish. He's going to pursue, he's going to catch up with all the scholars, decap the sacred site in the middle, and remember, VortiX will take a lot of time to get those upgrades.
And this is a little bit of an ouchie, right? Every scholar lost here when you go House of Learning means slower tech unlocks. It is a stinger. He does at least get there, though. Remember, damage has been done, like 12 villages now dead. So VortiX, despite the fact he was 5 villages behind, it's still going to be a healthy lead of 5 to 6 villages, right? So, like, although it seems like he was massacring, with that village count, it's the idle time that really made it beneficial, because butchering 10 villages is usually a good sign, but when we can't explain why he was 5 villages behind to begin with, it starts to feel less impactful when you throw away the army like that.
It's also the fact that we already have Lancers out for LucifroN, and don't forget, the 2 players have been playing pocket ecos the whole game with no punishment for coming from the other side. Now those Lancers, if they're detached, they can massacre those villagers, and that's an edge that LucifroN could use for the time being.
Instead, he's going to go on the flanks. I like this play with the meta. It gives you the movement speed to actually keep up with the horsemen, and then if you get the charge off, you'll be able to gap close. But it's going to waste a lot of time, and unless you want to build multiple metas, it's going to be very difficult to be everywhere at once.
Yeah, those Lancers could be put to a much better use. There's a hunt to the north, berries in the middle of the map. If he ever finds them...
It's over, right? Like,
exactly.
We're thinking the same thing. Like, it's fueling VortiX's economy, and he's going into crossbows and lancers. Like, these units are not cheap when it comes to food.
Exactly. Upgrades are slowly coming in here for VortiX, but there's still a nice window here for LucifroN. He's got the first mangonel out as well, so that's going to deal pretty well with the archers, and there's going to be a pivot into crossbows on the other side. VortiX goes for those. But then again, you still have 36 archers for LucifroN, so crossbows by themselves, they will still struggle.
There's many knights already coming out. Like, I'm concerned that VortiX is going to need that front line of spears to keep him bolstered, but he's not upgrading them, he's not building more, right? So like, this could actually hurt him dearly.
LucifroN doesn't see the villagers. Or will he? I think he spotted the villagers. He's so close.
I feel like you're at a stage you have to see it, right?
Yes.
There's...
You just probe it.
Wait, you can see the upgraded berry. Which isn't there now. Like, did he see it or not? Because observer view tends to get like half the pile extra, right? So like, I'm not sure if he saw it in time before the final berries got munched. But he's walking into more villages.
Oh, and look at that.
Okay.
VortiX is the first one to do this.
Yeah, but now Lucy can do the same, or he can go for the base, and he's heading into the base.
Oh, that could be crazy. These villagers actually trying to get a quick wall up here just to save themselves, and it's gonna be a full commitment coming in. There is not enough back at home, I feel like, for VortiX to defend this. He doesn't have the upgrades just yet.
It's like barricading the windows after the zombie got in the house. But oh my god, where are you going?
Casualties on both sides.
I mean, the eco lead is still there, but it just got shrunk a little. This commitment, though. He needs to force a fight, and he knows it, right? Because now he's the aggressor, so production advantage should be on VortiX's side. But I think what LucifroN realized is the berries, right? Like, well, okay, why was he out here? What was he doing? Where were these villagers going? He must be running out of food. LucifroN, on the other hand, still has food to work with. Gear stacks, he's got berry patches on the side, I think. Like, he has options that VortiX simply doesn't, which is why VortiX needs to get back out of the base, but to do so, he needs to beat this army first.
Yeah, decent enough engagement, but don't forget the Mangonel got a beautiful volley out before it was destroyed by the Springald, so many of the units here from VortiX are heavily damaged. And now, with the Matter still alive, this is a fight that LucifroN can take.
Just a few knights and a range of pew-pews behind it is enough to pew-pew pooped his opponent down. It will be a clean run. LucifroN takes round 1 of Golden League 2, 4-0.
What a set this was. LucifroN pulling off a masterclass. And while the scoreline may say it's a 4-0, each of these games were really close. Maybe except for game number 1. 2 mirrors that we have seen, game number 2, game number 3, so neck and neck. Small differences make the mile. And then you just see the whole story there, that faster castle age for LucifroN, and the fact that he could survive being outnumbered 2-1 on the army department thanks to those faster upgrades. That's the key thing here. That's what essentially set him up to win this game. And in the end, he wins 4-0, takes the first round of Golden League in a stellar fashion, really.
Yeah, and it's like looking back at this, like this clash, it's kind of easy to get sucked into this idea of like the back and forth exchanges. But it's kind of like it's debatey because of what's happening behind. Like LucifroN, the obvious details when he goes Castle Age ahead of VortiX. But the interesting thing about the dynamics of these civs, I think LucifroN leveraged really well. Like VortiX done the best he could in the situation, and he did make it look really close. But when you go for TOV, it's weird to say this, but your ceiling's kind of lower, right? Like you need more value out of your early units, which seems contradictory because you think a 15% increase attack speed would be better the later the game goes. The problem is on the other side, like that attack speed already exists via the metas that he struggled to snipe early on. But then on top of that, I'm always thinking those Vizier points, right? The Vizier points keep unlocking and more potential keeps on coming. I think LucifroN just kind of forcing stalemates constantly in the feudal age led to an overwhelming pressure where VortiX had to commit. He definitely found good value of that dive in the base, and I can't help but wonder how different this game would have looked if maybe he wasn't 5 villages behind. That timing when VortiX dove as LucifroN went Castle Age could have ended the game the other way, and this series could still be ongoing. But swings and roundabouts, ifs and buts, right? Like what we got here was dominant from both players. I'm really happy to see the 2 names at the top flipping a little, right? I think we got very used to, I think most people would in fairness say that Marilo and Beastie are seen as like their number 1, number 2. But LucifroN and VortiX, man, they have been absolutely stellar in round 1 of Golden League.
Exactly. LucifroN takes the win. He's going to have 100 points awarded to him, as well as $1,000 extra prize. Whereas for VortiX, he's going to settle with 80 points here. Still very much in a good position to make the Final Four in the playoffs, as you see over here. Beastie is going to finish 3rd with the 60 points awarded to him, and B is going to get the 40 points, being eliminated in the second to last round of the redemption brackets. Papi Paw and Marine Lord will exit with 30 points here in the first round. But don't forget, folks, this is far from the end of Golden League, but before we talk a lot more about the second round that's coming up next weekend, let's hear what LucifroN has to say about the set that he has just won. Hello, hello.